Good morning, everybody. This is some dedicated session to machine learning following yesterday's ML keynote with Swami. And today we're joined by some of the greatest minds in machine learning. So let's pass it over to Mike. Mike, you're joining us again today. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a principal data engineer at Clarinet, where I help our customers make better use of their data in the cloud. Largely focused on moving data around to get it into a position where you can start doing your machine learning. I hold 10 AWS certifications, including the machine learning specialty. And at the beginning of next year, I'll be CTO at a SaaS company where I'll be doing a lot more machine learning, in particularly with graph databases.
Thank you, Mike. Let's go to Gillian next. Gillian.
Hi, I'm Julian McCann, and I'm the CTO of WorkRate Software, which is a SaaS serverless product that runs in AWS, and we focus on the intelligent employee workplace, trying to bring some of those ML capabilities into the daily products that employees use during their day. So I am an ML hero with AWS, and I've spoken at multiple reInvents. And the area that I really like to focus on is, I call them like conversational AI, is making sense of data and being able to converse with computers.
And I'm Phil Basford. I'm Head of Solution Engineering at Inner Wisdom. We're one of the premier consultancy partners for AWS in the UK, and we're an ML specialist. And I'm also AWS APN at Basford, focusing on machine learning and ML ops. Great. Okay, so yesterday was the first keynote. It'd be good to get our views on how that went. It featured Swami, somebody you know well, Gillian.
Yes, I spoke with Swami last year at reInvent when we did the launch of Kendra. And I thought it was great to see an ML specific keynote, and it just shows the range of new services and capabilities that have been delivered. When we compare this year to last year, I mean, it was just so much. And the fact that it needed its dedicated session, I thought was great. And I think it does show, you know, ML is everywhere, and AWS are really trying to enable like developers and engineers, you know, to be able to take advantage of that.
Cool. And Mike, how did you think it went?
Yeah, I think it went well. As Julian said, there's just so much that was released yesterday. It's kind of overwhelming. But I think that making it available for all, that's the big thing. I think compared to the other clouds, AWS has done so much to make machine learning accessible to any developer. You don't need to be a specialist to get started. Yeah, sure, if you want to do the most powerful advanced stuff, it helps to know, but you can still get going with all kinds of services right off the bat.
Cool. Excellent. I suppose one thing I liked was the particular focus around how ML can be brought into places that don't necessarily actually have data. That was interesting use of Monotron and Panorama, etc. A lot is made of the latent value in data that you have, and that's obviously your rich source of machine learning data. But a lot of companies, especially industrial companies, etc., don't have those data sets. So it's interesting how AWS have put a lot more focus about how to enable ML for those types of customers. So that was quite important. For the format as well, it had a good balance of announcements versus case studies and user stories, and I particularly like the NFL one. Every time I go to reInvent, I always end up watching a couple of NFL games half drunk in a bar, always trying to work out what was actually going on. So it's good to see some of the stuff they're doing behind that, because it can be a bit brutal. So the stuff on collision and concussion was quite interesting, I thought. What was our standout announcements?
For me, I think it wasn't just one. It was like the range of features added to SageMaker. Again, it's all about enabling developers. like the jumps. So I mean, I could list them, but it was just the first sort of section was all these features were added to the SageMaker Studio. The jump start, the pre-trained models. So I mean, last night that was the first thing that I launched when I signaled was SageMaker Studio, and I was trying out the jump start, the one-click deploy of models, the pipelines, ML ops, and like simplifying that and showing engineers, end to end how you could deliver this. And I think it's bringing the gap, or shortening the gap, closing the gap, as you say, closing the gap between, standard engineering and data science. And I come from like a cloud architecture, serverless engineering background, and then I have morphed and learned about ML and NLP and through AWS, and I just see like this convergence now of standard engineering techniques, and the ML pipeline looked really good, and then behind the scenes, it's creating the code pipeline, code deploy. You can see the models and all the artifacts being created in SageMaker. So it was even just a great way to learn how you might do that, even if you don't use that tool itself. And then just the data wrangler and the processing of data. So to my mind, it was that big chunk of new features that I can see, even just from learning and exploring, more about how models work, and to clarify as well. So yeah, I thought that was really powerful. And again, the key message to my mind is, engineers will learn and need to learn more about ML, and these are great tools for the engineering community.
Absolutely, I can completely agree on the whole pipeline bit. Actually, to build out a full kind of ML pipeline on AWS, it involves quite detailed skills in quite a few areas of DevOps, engineering, architecture, and then just the ML and the data science side of it. So that's kind of a really interesting development. Mike, I suppose you'd love some of the fact that they've dropped ML into every single data product they have yesterday.
Pretty much, yeah. And then particularly Neptune ML, the one that has really caught my eye, knowing that where I'm going next, we've got a graph database already, and we're trying to do machine learning. So it's just let's load it into Neptune and see what we can do. But from working with customers over the last few years, just having the ability to do that right from the database, so like Redshift ML there as well, saves you moving all the data around. You can just start experimenting right away. The pipelines piece, though, that's biggie. It was on my wish list in our pre-event show. Something like a managed Kubeflow offering. Well, okay, this isn't Kubeflow, but it will do. That whole process, like you said, Phil, it is really, really involved right now. There's lots of different ways you can do it. Maybe through step functions and glue and lambdas and so on. This is a lot of code, a lot of stuff to maintain, a lot of stuff that can break. So to get it all kind of into one single place is just fantastic. And then the other one for me was debugger. Just to be able to see how your models are working and get an idea of what's going on could shorten the cycle of tuning your models considerably.
Yeah, so there's the other key thing was around that area and training. That seemed to have had a bit of focus. Make sure that you are feeding the model's data efficiently, that you're using the CPU and the GPU in tandem with each other. So it's interesting to see how some of those profiling features will help to improve that, because that is pretty much a trial and error process, more or less, at the moment. So it'd be good to see that. The other thing is about distributed training. So that should be good. And Trainium, and I was trying to not say that how Rick would say that from the Bite-Sized Breakfast, but how that all links in and how you can then start training stuff and models across a vast range of instances and GPUs. I think that's interesting. It's going to take some while to play with as well. So that's kind of cool. And then obviously we had AWS cheese, as we like to know it, for anybody who didn't pick it up in some of our commentary. And the new Monotron boxes look a bit like a slice of Dutch Gouda. It should be interesting. The fact that it can take heat, revolutions per minute, etc., from non-connected devices and then stream that data into the cloud. I think that's very important in terms of opening up another vast way of use cases, and more for the industrial industry that will have machinery that's not edge and not enabled for that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of cool. And the other one was the that I took away was around health. Obviously, big subject this year due to the pandemic. They also focused a bit on that, and also the diabetes thing with the health lake offering. What do we think about
that? So I haven't looked any more into Health Lake itself, but I did think it was interesting, like, as well as the sort of industrial aspect of it. We're very focused on specific industry-specific services is really what I was getting. You know, there was a lot of anomaly detection for manufacturing, and then the Health Lake. I think the use case and just the amount of data and making sense of the data, it seems really powerful, but you know, it's not an industry that I'm personally involved in. So I'd just be interested to see where they go with that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, sorry, I think it's definitely one to watch to see what other sort of things they pursue, other diseases and health concerns. I think there could be a lot of good that comes from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously it's diabetes that is featured. We're obviously in the COVID scenario, but there's other things like fighting cancer, detecting that early, that kind of thing, and wider disease protection. Maybe it can applied in the field in Africa, and that thing with malaria and that kind of thing. So it'd be really interesting to see who picks it up. Obviously, Philips was featured yesterday as a standout use case for that, so that it should be good.
Yeah, the thing that I just looked at my notes actually. The thing that they talked about was transcribe, comprehend, and comprehend medical and transcribe medical, and it's kind of that, you know. It's the experience that sits on top of all this data for healthcare professionals. It did seem to be, you know, and again, where my interest lies is being able to converse with your data. You can see it like trying to make sense and understanding the words, and you know, is this moving towards the future of more virtual healthcare tools? You know, like with that health lake underneath. I just think it's interesting, you know, how could something like this change, you know, how we get our healthcare. I mean, you have seen that with COVID, a lot more virtual. Like, it is face to face with the doctor or on the phone, but will we see more machine-based products, if that makes sense, to help with this? It's an interesting area because I think people have different opinions, you know.
I think it's interesting if you start marrying that maybe with open data sets and your own private data set, if that makes sense. So your own medical history, but you're able to cross-reference it with public research that's been done into different diseases. It should become more powerful over time. And then obviously there was bias. Bias got a huge thing. Obviously AWS were kind of wanting to set the record straight there, based on some of the news that's been in the industry, and I suppose it's where kind of the obviously the repower tech thing also comes into play here. Basically, for those who don't know, if you took like all the CVs that most IT companies probably hired on the last 10 years, 20 years, and build an algorithm, it's going to be biased normally to white males, frankly. And that's wrong, obviously. And bias is about identifying that kind of thing in your data sets and relabeling some of that data to make it more balanced, so that you come from a more ethnic diverse background, multi gender and sexuality and religious backgrounds, so you don't have those strong bias. So that's quite interesting. What do you guys think of that? Do you think I didn't really understand completely how they're addressing it, actually, and it probably requires a bit more deep dive on how to actually detect it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big step forward, but I think it's got to be a tentative step forward, because at the, we're worried about the bias because it can lead models down dark alleys. There's a really excellent book called Weapons of Mass Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, where she looks at the kind of benign nature most models have, but how when they're sort of used with the biases, how they end up in very dark places. So being aware of it and trying to take steps to combat it, fantastic. But if we put all our confidence in that tool, we may be blind to a different bias. So I think, yes, great. Let's, get it up front. Let's see what we can, that there may be blatant biases in our data sets that this tool can shout out and, point us to, but we definitely can't kind of rest entirely on it. We've got to still maintain vigilance and, combat bias wherever we notice it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Mike. I think this is a great start. And it just, in my mind, because the tool's there, and I haven't looked at it in detail yet, but I'm assuming it's part of this pipeline even that, it brings this concept of thinking about bias right to the forefront, so if there's something obviously wrong, you can see it, and, it'd be great to have that part of the pipeline. Doesn't get any further, but again, don't rely just on the tool, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it's a great start and just brings that conversation, and it's much more visual. People can see results from, the tool. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, do we think it would have solved the UK government's fiasco around exam marking in the last year? For those who don't know, basically, it was biased towards private schooling, basically. Do we think it would have done that, or do you still think it's fundamentally how you select your data, and there still has to be a human in the loop to make sure you're addressing that up front with those models?
Yeah, I'd say human in the loop, definitely. It'd be interesting to see, if we could get a hold of those data sets through this tool, what would happen. But that's the thing we've got to combat. The public, the general public, particularly anybody, and I'm one of them. I have a daughter who was affected by that. We're going to be that little bit more wary of particularly government machine learning type things as a consequence of that. So that's how important bias is, that it can completely ruin what was probably a well-intentioned thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't want to the headline was algorithm gone rogue, wasn't it?
Rogue algorithms.
Rogue algorithms. They don't really exist. It's the quality in them. So obviously there's the medical side of the pandemic, and there's also been a global recession, basically, as a result, downturn. Do we think that has now seeded the general startup industry and the industry as a whole to maybe move more to machine learning? Do you think maybe the upside is that more people will be looking at machine learning in the next year, 2 years, as we come out of the pandemic period and we start going back to economic growth?
So I think, this is an area like the future of work in my mind has fundamentally shifted. And we have fast tracked, remote working. We've proven that it can work. So I think the tools that need to exist around that are evolving, and they are using ML. So and it is an area that I've talked about before, like chatbots and virtual assistants, and being able to call somebody to get, the new laptop is you've seen, and we have seen a lot of move more to digital, the digital transformation of the workplace is being fast tracked. So the tools that come along with that are more, I still feel they are ML, but it's more ML services. You're not really building bespoke chatbot models. You're using things like Lex, you're using Connect, and I just see that sort of evolution. But I also see because the workplace is changing, in my mind, it becomes more global. And you see that with tech industry, people moving out from the West Coast and then complaining why they're not getting paid West Coast wages. But the world exists and there's talent around the world. And I think, you know, that's why I love AWS and so this democratization, and their universities and the ability for people to, you know, with a computer and a browser, be able to enable themselves through technology. And so that's a big driver, and it is one of the reasons I do like AWS so much, is it enables people who maybe never thought about a career in technology through the tools and the techniques. And ML is going to be everywhere. So, you know, that aspect of it, if that makes sense, I think it changes just what people could actually work in.
Yeah, I agree. I suppose the other thing I have in mind is coming out of the pandemic, it's and recession. It's normally the kind of the breeding ground for the next round of startups when after a downturn. It's an exciting time. I suppose with AWS's complete focus on basically removing the heavy lifting, or at least lowering the barrier to entry. I just feel that the next round of startups are going to even more embrace ML. They're going to just use it more. It's going to be easy for them to get into it and exploit it and disrupt lots of the industries in ways they haven't been done already. So I think it's going to be an exciting 12 months to if not longer to see some of those new really innovative use cases come out. Mike, do you think a lot of the announcements of last week are enterprise focused, or did you see them more developer focused? And what do you think a big enterprise can take from the machine learning keynote?
For me, I think developer focused for the most part. I think things like Monotron, that is sort of an enterprise play, big industry where they've got huge estates where stuff is already running and there's no data feed. You know, that's a big step into there. But I think making ML easier for developers who aren't data scientists is going to be that inspiration for many businesses. Somebody will, seen that keynote yesterday, gone, oh, I can do machine learning from Redshift. Oh, I just need to do this and this, and somebody will put something together, and there'll be a spark of a new idea that might turn a business that struggled through the pandemic into another successful business.
Cool. And so, lastly, so do we want to see another machine learning one next year? And will we all be front of the queue to get into, hopefully, it physically in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I think there will be. I mean, I just see there'll probably be more and more traction, more and more things to announce. So yeah, I definitely like the focus and to be able to go into things in more detail. So yeah, don't know if I'll go to Las Vegas. It's such a long way.
It is. To be honest, this last week I haven't missed the jet lag. That's for sure. That's kind of cool. Missed the people and everything.
Yeah.
Running low on socks. So, but yeah, I haven't missed a jet lag. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I suppose maybe I don't know. Maybe I can see the case. They've done it for security, haven't they? They've got a dedicated conference now for security. Yeah. I just wonder. It's going so big. The criticism I see from other people that are not completely into the machine learning world as we are is like, oh, it's took over everything. It's like half of Jassie's keynote. They've done up. It's just such a big subject. I just wonder maybe
they had the was it 2 years ago, the REMARS? I don't know if you attended that. It was AWS REMARS. It was in Las Vegas too. It was robotics, artificial intelligence. I can't remember what it stood for, but I thought that was a fantastic